Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'd like to start with just a couple of welcomes. First of all, a big welcome to yourselves and for taking the time out to join myself and Tom this afternoon. And the second welcome to Tom Brewer, who you can see here has a very interesting job title, which is the Commercial Performance Director at LeasePlan. But a little more about that particular title and the responsibilities that it entails a little later on. I'd also like to do a couple of quick introductions. The first is just myself. I'll be hosting the call today. My name is Simon Wield and I'm one of the co-founders of CloudApps. And the second is really just to give you a very quick introduction into CloudApps as an organisation. We as a business focus around behavioural motivation and gamification. We've been doing this since 2009. And in doing so, we have a couple of things. The first is a particular product, which we're going to be talking about a little bit today, which is SuMo, which is a native Salesforce application based around behavioral motivation. And the second part, which is a very important part, is a managed service that we wrap around that. And it's the combination of these two, along with the behavioral science that provides, that ensures the success of the solution. We have over 250 customers, of which you can see some of the leading brands here, and LeasePlan being one of those that we're going to be diving into a lot more detail today. You may have also listened to a recent webinar we've done around Click, and if you would like to access that, then please contact us and we can give you some details around that as well. We're particularly proud of being also put forward and winning a Gartner Cool Vendor award as well quite recently. But today really is about focusing around LeasePlan and their experience with using SuMo and the impact that it's had. And so Tom actually wrote a LinkedIn blog which was entitled "How LeasePlan Guaranteed a Successful CRM Implementation." And this is really about that journey and sharing that journey with you today. So the format that we wanted to follow today was about a 30-minute sort of Q&A with myself providing some questions forward to Tom, but most of the talking really coming from Tom and his experiences. But if you have any questions that you'd like to raise throughout, then please just chat those away in the chat window. We'll be listening to that and we'll either answer them in line or we'll take them at the end and make sure they're covered. Without further ado, I'd like to dive in a little bit more detail for Tom to tell us some more background about LeasePlan as a company, who they are if you're unfamiliar with them, but also as Tom as an individual and how he has this rather interesting job title. So Tom.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks, Simon. Well, LeasePlan isn't a household name, certainly not in the UK, but kind of our goal in life really is to answer some of the key business problems affecting people who run vehicle fleets, so company car schemes, or companies that want to offer an employee benefit to their people in terms of a car. So our business is in good shape. We have, as you'll see, over 1.3 million vehicles under our management worldwide, and we are the largest vehicle leasing company in the world. The business is growing and right now we're investing heavily in a lot of digital infrastructure and systems, Salesforce being one of those, and really focusing on how we can kind of meet the demands of our customers in the next sort of 5 to 10 years. For us, those demands are going to look quite different as our industry is really changing, probably from a kind of a traditional leasing space into a wider employee mobility picture. So equally, vehicle leasing is a mature product in the UK. It isn't growing. And so to be successful, we're going to have to beat the competition. And so in sales, for us, that's about making every interaction that we have with a customer or prospect count and really leveraging our scale as an organisation.
And that's where you come in then, as the...
Yeah. So yeah, commercial performance director. So yeah, a new role for LeasePlan, kind of born out of the successful launch of Salesforce.com in the UK for us. And my current role really is to fundamentally help LeasePlan, along with a lot of other people, but move the needle in terms of sales performance. Crucially, that's to capitalise on our investment in Salesforce.com and other products that we've launched and to really realise the benefits case. I'm sure, like most organisations, we want to win more business, grow wallet share with existing customers, and equally we want to do this by offering sort of real expertise and value in every customer interaction. My own background is in a B2B sales environment, and hopefully I'm sort of bringing some of this experience to bear in the way we move forward as a business. In terms of Salesforce, though, and IT implementation, I was a novice up until probably about 8 to 10 months ago. I wasn't a previous Salesforce user and little experience in sort of big IT projects. I did, however, kind of hear some of the rumours about CRM implementations and how tricky they can be.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gartner quotes that 50% of them can be a failure unless you get the key components right within that project. So it's actually quite an investment then for LeasePlan to take you out of the business where you were selling and contributing and doubling their growth, etc., and put you into this. So they obviously see this as a key role within the business to ensure its success going forward. So with this kind of new role that you then took on from your sales side of things, how did you approach the project, and what were the sort of the ways that you were going to make sure it's successful?
Yeah, so it was probably autumn last year, 2013, when we kind of embarked on the implementation of Salesforce. We were one of a small group of kind of lead countries for LeasePlan that were rolling out, and that implementation will kind of encompass over 32 countries once we're finished. For us, we were replacing what was an aging piece of CRM software. Nobody would have heard of it, but it had become very out of date and ultimately quite poorly utilised by the majority of the UK sales team. And over time, really, it just hadn't moved with the business. And because of that, we'd really lost our discipline as a sales organisation in maintaining that data and using that system. So I think the key for us was that we recognised that at the outset. So our project, which was named Amplify, was always positioned as a business change project, much more than just a kind of technical software installation. And we wanted to sort of really boost our sales effort as well as implement Salesforce as the technology.
Fantastic. And did you have a kind of a process that you were going through, or a sort of some steps and a plan that you were looking to step through to ensure that success?
Yeah, it wasn't a formula, and I don't put it forward as such, but certainly there were some things that we wanted to do. We had a good implementation partner, so we used Deloitte as our implementation partner, and we worked with them, and ultimately, they were key to a successful outcome. In terms of the process, 4 steps really that I'd maybe kind of pull out. Firstly, kind of introducing the system. So we introduced the system at our annual sales conference. We invested heavily in user training, that comprised good materials. We made sure that the training was delivered by LeasePlan people, sort of tapping in where necessary to some of the expertise from Deloitte and others. We had a good executive sponsor, and now Managing Director Matt Dyer was very much behind our project, and that was key throughout.
So the key ingredients to success, and I think one of the interesting things here is the amount of investment and time and attention to detail that you put into the sort of the people side of this project, as well as the technology and the process to ensure the success of that kind of those classic 3 things going together, which often is the sort of poor child of any project and gets kind of forgotten, or the budgets get squeezed. You were determined to ensure that part.
Yeah, I think as we sort of reflected on what we'd done, I think ultimately I'd probably say that the technical side of what we were doing was probably 40% of the project, and the business change, what's sometimes referred to as kind of the softer elements, was more like 60%. So yeah, you're right. We made sure we had kind of those bases covered as well.
Okay, fantastic. So with that all kind of lined up, how did you go about actually guaranteeing the user adoption of your CRM project?
Yeah, well, I don't think there's any guarantees, and we are probably 9 months in as a customer of Salesforce and a user of their system. So yeah, we're well on our way and enjoying it. I think there was some nervousness around our organisation, particularly at sort of managing board level, around whether we were going to get good value for money from Salesforce. And it was, it was a must that we delivered on the benefits case and kind of got our return on investment. And it was kind of in our discussions around how we might give some surety to user adoption that we first started to look at sort of SuMo, and gamification as potentially part of the answer to that. So my own kind of school of thought and perspective on this is that whilst we didn't really want to reward people for updating the CRM system, essentially doing what they had to do, which was a core part of their role, equally, we didn't want to take a sort of hardline management approach, which we thought could detract from some of the excitement and anticipation of launching Salesforce.
Okay.
You see, in some of our recent discussions, actually, with colleagues from other countries, LeasePlan organisations, there's been some debate around the question of ensuring user adoption. Our colleagues in Germany, for instance, don't really have any challenges in this area. Might not come as a huge surprise to some of the people on the line. Not only was rewarding the use of Salesforce kind of an alien concept to them, equally they didn't need to take the stick approach to get people in the right mindset to use the system. But for us, SuMo is a good fit. We wanted to encourage adoption by actually appealing to people's motivation. It wasn't about big rewards, but it was the product is a very neat way of creating an environment within the Salesforce application to get people using, Salesforce to maximum benefit.
So it's like a sort of a balance, really, but you're also taking into consideration the culture of the of that part of your business, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, excellent. And so this word gamification that you've mentioned and we've mentioned as well, it's a word that's kind of thrown around quite a lot. What does it actually mean to LeasePlan as an organisation and obviously to yourself as well?
Yeah, so to us it was a very new concept, one that we've ultimately come to quite quickly embrace, I think. But definitely at the outset we had some sceptical people amongst our organisation. We're not an organisation of sort of 20-somethings. Most of our employees grew up playing games on Amstrads rather than Xboxes. So ultimately, gamification for us was about celebrating our top users and coaching people on the job to kind of adopt the best behaviours. And if I can use an analogy, I'd probably liken it to the relationship between a golfer and maybe his caddy. They're there to point you in the right direction, give you some hints and tips when needed. But ultimately, it's kind of still down to you to kind of hit the winning shot or hold that putt. So it doesn't detract. It doesn't make you sell better as such, but it's good to have it in your corner.
Yeah, very topical with the Ryder Cup win this weekend. Thank you. Yes, yeah. Okay, so you've kind of set the scene a little bit now about sort of why it was important to you as a business to drive the adoption of the application, etc. But whereabouts did you start? How did you go about actually understanding what you needed what behaviours you needed to drive and how you were going to approach that? Yeah,
so we weren't short of ideas. The board planning exercise was a great place for us to start, really, just to get all of those ideas and suggestions out into the open. You can see we had various different stakeholders from across the business sort of inputting into that process. And we weren't short of questions we wanted to answer, behaviours that we wanted to promote, or even fields that we wanted to get populated. We didn't bring a huge amount of data across from our legacy system because of the state it was in. We certainly had some boxes and some data that we wanted to collect fairly quickly to make Salesforce really work for us.
I noticed your managing director, Matt Dyer's there in the middle. What's he doing playing games at work?
So what we're doing there is really trying to kind of refine and define what we wanted to track and measure, looking at different user groups and the profiles of those user groups. Because as you'll appreciate, with over 200 circa 200 sales users within our organisation, from people working maybe behind the scenes in bid and implementation teams to frontline sales and account managers, we wanted to do different things with different people. So this exercise is us really just trying to flesh that out, and ultimately it's very productive in terms of walking out with quite a neat set of business requirements to move forward.
And a bit more fun than a classic requirements gathering session with a spreadsheet and whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Light relief from the project.
Okay. So you've now gathered these requirements and you understand what you want to do and how you want those to align to the KPIs that you're driving. What was the next stage of the project?
Yeah, so the next option for us was really to decide whether we wanted to run the SuMo application in baseline mode.
So what does that mean? Sorry, what's that?
Yeah, so what baseline mode does is it effectively kind of hides the application or the app from the users, while sort of simultaneously getting the game going in the background and enabling myself and a few other people just to see how things sort of react within the Salesforce environment and with the activities that are going on day in and day out in our organisation. So it's really about sort of sense checking what we've decided on in terms of the behaviours and activities that we wanted to promote.
So it's a bit like having some analytics around the behaviours of people and how they were navigating around the system and how they were using it and what parts of the business process they were adhering to and not. And okay, very, very useful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great way for us to really get some comfort around how the application worked for the first time. Equally, if you kind of get it wrong at the planning stage, then it gives you the opportunity to change some things before you go live. And as I remember, we changed a couple of things and made some tweaks here and there so that we felt, when we did go live, I think in May of this year, we were in a really good place to get started.
And were you able to use that data afterwards, after you've gone live, and use it to compare or anything like that with?
Absolutely, and I think we'll see later the level of activity we had within the baseline period, and it's been a really effective way of kind of answering some of those sort of skeptics in terms of what this stuff can do.
Great. Okay, look forward to seeing those. So, with all these hundreds of things you wanted to change the behaviour of the use of the application, which ones did you pick first, and kind of why did you focus on those?
Yeah, so one maybe to pick out here was really about getting our contacts up to date. So really things like job titles, the place of the contact within the organisation, whether they were part of the DMU, even things as simple as just accurate contact details.
And why was that important? What was the sort of business value of that?
Yeah, so aside from having just good data, we were also making an investment in marketing automation software, and we use Marketo, and a number of the campaigns that we are running at the moment rely on the quality of that data.
Okay, yeah.
Across our organisation and the companies that we deal with, fleet can be managed in lots of different places, from a HR director to a finance director to a traditional fleet manager. Hitting those audiences with the right communications and tailoring those communications is key. But you can ultimately only do that if you know where these people work and what their roles are. So I think what seemed like quite a sort of blunt instrument in terms of let's get this data right, behind that sat a real story of business value for us, and hopefully we'll reap the rewards of that.
And there's presumably it's of no advantage to the salesperson really from that perspective, other than they obviously get the marketing coming the other end. So they're not populating those fields because they don't get the direct impact. So
yeah, ultimately, but hopefully the insight that a tool like Marketo gives us will create more appointments and more opportunities going forward.
Absolutely.
So just about making that link for your sales teams.
Yeah. Okay. And the other ones that you looked at here?
Yeah, so the other one's strategic account plans. So we as you would expect, had account plans for all our customers, but those sat outside of our CRM system previously. When we implemented Salesforce, we were keen to kind of move that into the Salesforce environment, which we did. So we had to get our strategic account plans into the system, but equally not just populate them. We wanted to see what activities and tasks people were creating with their customers. So we rewarded not only for sort of populations of things like SWOT analysis, but also then were people actually taking initiatives and actions with those customers to move the relationship forward. Chatter was also key. We wanted people to communicate across the organisation. We have people based all around the UK. We've got a couple of offices, but from a sales perspective, we're a field-based sales organisation, and so we really needed to get the real benefit from Chatter. And I think our sales teams, again, they're probably not your average kind of social media user. So, so Chatter was new for them, and sort of getting them to shout about their success, offer best practice, share materials was something that we really wanted to promote.
Great. Okay. So you've obviously been and you've collected these and started sort of working on these, but how did you have you got any kind of recommendations and top tips for how people should pick these sort of behaviours and which ones they should focus on first?
Yeah, I mean, I think keep it simple. Don't focus on too many things from day one. Best practice is probably choose maybe 6 to 10 attributes that you'd like to sort of use in your game, and that was about right. I think we probably ended up with a few more than that, but that was more just because we were a bit too keen, I think. And it's not a lot of work to get started, to be fair, but it is worth putting in the time at the outset of the planning stage, because I think if you get that bit right, then you can really start to enjoy the competition when you go live, and seeing how kind of this unfolds with your organisation and your employees. So those were two key things, and also for us, recognising the team was important. As much as promoting success at an individual level, we wanted to motivate the teams. We have a sort of a mantra at LeasePlan that sales is a team sport, and it absolutely is. In kind of the sales that we make are often sort of big investment decisions for our customers, and involve a huge number of people, both sort of at the cold face and behind the scenes. So we wanted to recognise all the different players in terms of their contribution.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked out the planning piece, because we find this with other customers as well, that it's obviously very easy just to kind of set a game up and reward on 6 things or whatever it might be, but unless you get those aligned to the KPIs the business are trying to drive and the actual pains that they're trying to do, it can be very confusing for the individuals of why they're doing this and what the benefits are. So I'm glad you raised that point. So did you kind of like switch it on, SuMo? Did you kind of, what was the process of going through this?
Yeah, so I suppose we wanted to make a bit of a song and dance about it. And we wanted to launch it with a bit of fun. We kind of got agreement that we could kind of take the sales team off site for sort of half a day to do that. And I'd recommend anyone, if they are launching this and that's an option open to them, that's a good way to go.
This looks like a nice venue. Where were you here?
Yeah, so we were at one of our suppliers. I think we were at Mercedes-Benz World,
nice.
In their cinema room, which was great. So we had about 80 people in the room, and really this was about kind of explaining the concept to them, because for them it was brand new on that day. We also wanted to, you can see the flags in the background, so it's good to have a theme to kind of run through this. So we used the World Cup, which was very topical at the time. So we were launching in May, just ahead of the World Cup kicking off. And ultimately our competition ran through right up until the World Cup final. And we used the competing nations as part of the levelling system.
Okay. So how high up was England in that?
I think England was number 2.
Oh, okay.
Which was probably optimistic as it turned out. With Brazil at the top, who obviously also, that was probably a bit optimistic on our part there as well. But it just provided a good context for what we were doing. Yeah. And it was something that sort of carried us through and kept momentum going with the game as we went through.
Excellent. Are there's some prizes you're offering? I don't see any Rolex watches or things like that here.
No, so no Rolexes, unfortunately. Some Fitbits, which is close, I suppose. But yeah, no, fairly low value rewards. It was more about fun and recognition along the way. So we used some iTunes gift cards and some champagne and some things like that. So not a big investment in prizes or anything like that, but they were still fiercely competed for nonetheless.
So how did this kind of manifest itself in Salesforce, and how did you kind of manage to communicate it appropriately and through different channels about the progress of the game, and so people were always engaged and chatting about it and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so it's difficult to ignore, to be honest. The SuMo app is as I think you said at the outset, is native to Salesforce, and to the non-technical amongst us, what that means is really it's there right in your face within the application. Also worked on Salesforce One with a lot of our field sales people are using Salesforce One. There's a sort of mobile companion app that we're using as well. So there wasn't a lot of getting away from it, but equally it didn't sort of encroach on the main sort of Salesforce account record. And so people were very much going about their jobs as they were before, but with the added benefit of sort of SuMo helping them along the way.
Okay, so I can see it here in the browser. It's like the sidebar or whatever of Salesforce here. got it running on the mobile so they could access it wherever they like. But what's this thing on the right here? What were you using there? What's that?
Yeah, so we were keen to give some publicity to what we were doing and some visibility to the people that are being successful. We used some of the leaderboards that are available, and we put those up in TV screens around our office.
Nice.
I think that really helped. Board directors walking past TV screens and really noticing salespeople that probably weren't front of mind when you're a field salesperson and you're in the Northeast and you're plugging away and trying to win business. Sometimes it can be difficult to kind of get on the radar of a board director, even if you're being really successful. And this brought real visibility to the organisation, and ultimately it was good for motivation.
So these are sort of digital representations of what's going on, etc. Did you produce any other types of materials?
Yeah, so we had some launch material. We had very much in and around our theme. Again, sort of as an aid memoir, as people got started, how can I earn points? What are the things that people are sort of targeting in terms of behaviours? And this was really useful as well.
Okay. So you also mentioned you talked about the road to Brazil and things like that. So did you add a bit of humour into this and things as well? Was it a bit of fun?
Yeah, we definitely wanted to have fun with this. I think we used chatter quite a lot at this point. People started changing their role pictures within Salesforce to famous footballers, so that was quite good fun. Sort of normal kind of chatter etiquette was sort of relaxed for the period of the competition, so there was good banter amongst people.
Great. So it sounded like they received it quite well then as a group.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think there's people that sort of thrived on the competitive element of it, but I would say as well, if that's not something that you're so interested in, then ultimately we have people using this almost as a training tool, as an aid to using Salesforce in the way that it was intended to be used. And when you're replacing a system which is very different to Salesforce, then sort of getting people up to speed and using the application as it was intended and getting real benefit from it is also what SuMo can help with.
Great. Okay. So you talked right at the top of the call about the main areas that you were focusing on. Could you share with us what those sort of outcomes were and what the impact was of using SuMo?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess we didn't think we had an engagement problem before. I still don't think we had, but I just think this shows the power of what this application can do. Activity was up, well, at least sort of 5 times on what it was prior to us using SuMo. Like I said, we didn't really perceive an engagement issue, but what we were able to do is really direct people to the things that we wanted them to do first, or the behaviours that we wanted them to display within the system.
Great. Okay. So if we relate it back to some of the things that you were looking at the beginning, I think one of them was around making sure you're capturing the right contacts and identifying them. It looks like here that's you've had a dramatic effect on that. So that must be quite good for your Marketo side of things.
Yeah, definitely. As I said, just knowing where people work and where they sit within the organisation is going to really help us in terms of getting good value for money from those things.
Yeah. Okay. And then from another one was around your sort of executing the strategy. So one of the things a lot of people struggle with is getting people to put activities in and then complete those activities. So here you're comparing sort of week 1 of the baseline versus week 1 of the live, and it looks like here you've had a dramatic impact there as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing some really good actions going on with the account teams, some really good ownership of this sort of strategic account plan. Again, when we're trying to pick things to use for different audiences, for new business, it was very much about opportunity creation. But for an account manager, sort of managing a fairly loyal customer portfolio, we wanted to reward them as well. So choosing things like the strategic account plan was key.
Okay, so if we look at some of the growth as well that we had over time, so it seems to me like there was a kind of a baseline period there where you were gathering a few things. But I noticed here there's obviously a rise as we just identified. But what were these kind of bumps that we had here where we were up to over 3,000 kind of points that we were collecting in a week? What were you doing there that changed?
Yeah, so I think as I said before, it's very flexible in terms of adding new stuff into the mix as you go through. So during the course of the competition, We did add some extra opportunities for them to score points, golden goals using our World Cup theme. And also during this period as well, we're promoting via Chatter, posting dashboard snapshots to the Chatter feed. And those things are very powerful in terms of somebody that might be suffering a little bit of fatigue in terms of the competition, in terms of getting them going.
So it allowed you to sort of keep it alive and keep it changing and that sort of thing, so people continue to be engaged. Yeah, I guess. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we saw at the end, as we get towards the sort of final days of the competition, there was that extra effort going in to make sure that people who were competing for the prizes were going to come out the winner.
Had a nice lunch at the end of it. Excellent. So this is great. You've got some great results out of this piece. What else are you looking to use SuMo for, sort of within your business or other parts of your business?
Yes, so we're looking to launch with another division of our company at the moment. We have a brand called LeasePlan Go, where we're specifically targeting SME organisations with our fleet products. And their sales environment is a little bit different. So they're an office-based, primarily telesales operation. So we're about to launch a new incentive with them in the coming weeks, using royal households as our theme. So the levelling system will include things like Buckingham Palace and Sandringham and Windsor Castle, which is what they're into. So it sounds good fun again. For the other people, maybe a second campaign is kind of on the horizon. I think what we'll do is probably look at some harder metrics in terms of linking points to opportunity creation, and probably more sort of closely aligned with some of the KPIs that we monitor more regularly in terms of new business success and things like that. But looking forward to getting going again.
Excellent. And having been through this whole exercise, have you got any kind of hints and tips that we might have for some of the people listening?
Yeah, as I think we said, there's a temptation to do a lot and do it quickly. So try and keep it simple if you embark on this journey. The Chatter posts rewarding little and often with prizes is good. The visibility ultimately was key for us. So that publicity around how people were performing, and the communication, I guess as well. What I would say is that you don't have to support this with sort of a major investment in prizes. I think what you'll find is that people will be very motivated by the element of competition and the type of behaviours that you're trying to drive.
Yeah, I mean, we find that with other customers, it's not about the size of the prize; it's about the recognition of the individuals and things as well. So, well, that's been fascinating for us. Thank you very much. And there's a number of questions that have kind of come in, so we wanted to make sure we left enough time for those. So if we can address some of those, Tom, that'd be great if you're up for that.
Yeah, of course.
Fantastic. So. The first question we got here is around the sort of around SuMo and the fact that it's native on Force.com. Was that an important part of your decision process, and what was the sort of advantages of that?
Yeah, I guess it was. I don't think we were having gone through the implementation of Salesforce. We weren't up for another big implementation of a piece of software, so it needed to be fairly quick and easy. Then the native bit for us was important just because we didn't want to store our data in a separate cloud.
Right, yeah.
So from a security perspective, that was a consideration.
Already been through IT scrutiny, etc.
We had all the compliance boxes ticked, so we were kind of good to go.
So did you find that anybody kind of tried to game the system and try and find ways around it? And what did you do about that?
Yeah, I don't know whether people tried to game it, but we saw a lot of people make quite a quick start.
Okay.
And that left some people sort of a little bit on their heels in terms of competing. But what we did was we introduced other opportunities to earn rewards that maybe certain people within the organisation couldn't achieve points for. So really try and sort of level the playing field a little bit. But ultimately, we were quite happy that people were being competitive about this. We were not historically an organisation that has a sort of highly competitive sales culture. And I'd be lying if I was saying that that wasn't something that we kind of wanted to just turn up a little bit. And so we were quite happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, we found that that actually, or you tend to get a little, or our customers tend to get a little bit focused on the game itself and how the game's performing, rather than actually realizing that it doesn't matter how many points they get, because they're still giving you benefits of business at the end. If you're filling stuff out and doing the right things, whether the game's balanced or not, it doesn't matter, because you're getting the benefits. So,
yeah, I mean, we saw a huge improvement in some of the data that we were able to capture during that period, and yeah, it's going to stand us in pretty good stead.
So we've focused quite a bit on sales today, and one of the questions that's come in is, is this just for sales, or do you think it would be applicable for contact centres, for service centres, for marketing, or indeed other areas of the business?
Yeah, and I suppose that's a question we've asked ourselves. So a couple of alternative uses that we're currently considering at the moment. So we have a telematics product. Which, for those unfamiliar with that, is basically a device that fits into vehicles and monitors things like fuel consumption, miles travelled, and basically captures data from the car. So all around kind of the connected car, which you hear things from Tesla and organisations like that, is going to be key over the next sort of 5 to 10 years. So we're really thinking about how we can motivate drivers of LeasePlan vehicles to really improve their driving behaviour. So to be safer on the roads, to get better fuel consumption, ultimately maybe to undertake less journeys to reduce their environmental impact. So there is an opportunity, I think, for gamification to kind of diversify into that environment, which is quite exciting.
That's really interesting, because that's actually not just gaming your employees, but that's in gaming your customers ultimately.
Yeah,
which is obviously another area that people can do to incentivize them to buy more products, upsell, cross sell, or indeed in your case to provide them with a price that is appropriate for their driving skills or capabilities. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. We've got a couple of other questions that have come through here. So. Lee had a question around how many users have you got and that you're providing this for?
Yeah, so within the UK, we've got about 600 employees in the UK, a couple of hundred within the sales division. So we'll be extending our use of Salesforce.com as an organisation in the coming years. So I think our licensed population will increase, and there'll be opportunities then to use tools like this with other people as well.
Excellent. And then another question here, which is quite an interesting one, from Simon, which is, were there any unexpected results?
Good question. I think the team that ultimately won, we maybe were a little bit surprised by that, or some of the orders in terms of the team incentives. Probably weren't hugely surprised by the individual winners. They were what we might call the killers, or the new business people that just love that competitive element. But yeah, I think there were certainly a few people that were maybe not front of mind when we considered who was being successful and disciplined in this area. So it does allow you to really shine a light on that. One of our teams we probably thought was using Salesforce quite successfully. And it turned out the engagement level was quite low there. So you find out some interesting things along the way. Yeah,
and we found this out with other customers as well, where somebody that you were expecting to be quite engaged and was doing stuff, they're not necessarily the case, and so you have different leaders that come through in that particular instance, and it actually gives you sometimes the quiet ones are doing the right thing, and not the ones who have sort of blown their own trumpets, as it were, going through it.
Exactly.
And with this, another question that's come through. The question's really around the sort of insight that you're getting. The piece there is, have you found this information useful when looking to do some sort of sales coaching? So looking at this more from an HR perspective, how useful has that insight been for you?
Yeah, it has. I think we're looking at levels of activity and productivity, but also we have a commercial training program that we're implementing at the moment, and sort of Salesforce is sort of right at the center of that. So we're seeing people use Chatter and the libraries function to store sales collateral, and some of the messaging that you can use with the SuMo app within the application enables you to kind of point people to certain activities that they could do in addition to what they are doing. So, for instance, if you're updating a contact after a meeting event, taking the time and trouble to kind of really enrich that record is something that SuMo can help with.
Okay. And then another question we've got, another interesting one we've got is, having been through this whole process and travel the journey, which seems very structured and all the rest of it, I'm sure you've got some ideas on what you might have done differently.
Yeah, not too much, thankfully. I think we did a lot of good things, but I've been sort of gathering feedback from the various different teams. We went out to quite a wide and diverse group of people, people that sell to different markets, people that maybe sell from an office space rather than in the field, account managers and new business people. So we had people in lots of different scenarios. And I think trying to pitch all of those people together, it can be a challenge. So keeping the user group slightly smaller and targeting them with something that's very relevant to them is probably something that I'll take forward with our next campaign, rather than sort of trying to do it en masse. We'll probably be a little bit more selective and considered in how we approach different user groups. So maybe more competitions, but with smaller teams.
Okay, so to make it short and sharp and more focused around those individuals.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. We might like some of the new stuff we're doing around being able to have multiple leveling systems within the same environment and that sort of thing as well, so you don't have to follow the British households for your group.
Yes.
So another question here from another Simon is, have you linked your rewards program into Salesforce?
So not our commission scheme at the moment.
Okay.
So something that our users definitely want. So, but the data that drives people's performance is very much visible. So the two things really should converge. I think we are on the whilst we're sort of 9 months in now, it's not letting up in terms of the requirements, and from day to day, our business is thinking about lots of new and interesting ways that we can use Salesforce, SuMo, gamification to more effect.
So one of the interesting things that we sometimes have with some customers is whether you should get involved, as in the management team and the executive team, into the process. What's your kind of take on that, having been through this process?
Yeah, I mean, I think because we pitched teams against each other, and one of the good things about that was that the performance of those teams very much reflected on the management of those teams. So I think you kind of had that buy-in from both the middle and senior management in terms of the performance of their own individual teams. So they were pretty engaged with what was going on. As much as you've got people wanting to finish first, I think the key thing here is probably not to finish bottom. What we did see was, even if people were out of the running for some of the sort of leading positions, there was a lot of activity and desire to make sure that you weren't bottom of the pile.
Because of the visibility, presumably.
Yeah, ultimately, because it was sort of front and centre.
Yes, yeah, no, I understand. Okay, so we've got a couple of last questions, if I can just take those. I appreciate we're close to our 45 minutes here. So first one, again, from Richard here. So how long did it take from you deciding you needed this new CRM system that you had right through to actually then starting the implementation of that?
So Salesforce for us was a global project, as I said, encompassing quite a few countries. So there was quite a big selection process in terms of looking at different CRM systems. And it was probably for LeasePlan, it was probably at least a 12-month exercise before we really kind of got started, appointed an implementation partner, and started our build. But I think once we made that decision, we're a fairly thorough organisation, but once we made that decision, we moved quite quickly. So it was from the start of our build phase through to our first users going live. We were live within 4 months, which was probably beyond our expectations.
Yeah, and what kind of took the most time within that phase?
Gosh, so we used kind of an agile project methodology. So we went through, I think, 8 different sort of waves, and it was really the pace. We kept the pace because we made decisions quite quickly.
Yeah.
And ultimately, because we decided to keep it out of the box, that enabled us to implement pretty quickly. So yeah, it was a good approach with a good partner.
Okay, excellent. And the last question I've just got here is around this particular individual. We're looking at currently starting our journey with SuMo. And did you find it hard to sell the product to your senior management and execs? Was there a sort of an ROI? What sort of business case you put together?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, we did have some skeptical people within the organisation. When you start throwing words like gamification around LeasePlan, you get a few strange looks. But this isn't a huge investment. Certainly, in comparing it to our Salesforce investment, it's a drop in the ocean. So, it wasn't a huge investment decision for us. I think we were very quickly able to establish that we were getting good value for money. I think it's all. If you build a benefits case off the back of Salesforce, the worst thing you can do is go live and then sort of forget about that. For us, benefits realization was absolutely fundamental to this project being deemed a success. And anything like SuMo that can help with that is very helpful indeed.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tom. It leaves me to thank both everyone that's on the call and the contribution of all the questions and making it very interactive. That was hugely beneficial. And a big thank you to Tom for being so open and sharing your experiences, good and bad. Really appreciate that. We'll be sending out a link to this sort of information and the recording for people. But if you also want to get in touch with us, obviously, we've got that on the screen here, so you can see at info@cloudapps.com. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And look forward to speaking to everybody shortly.